Greetings, fellow Americans. Welcome to Fireside Chat, State of Our Nation. I am your host, Suzanne Tanner, candidate for House of Representatives 2026 and candidate for President 2028. So we're going to talk about the National Housing Construction Project. It's going to start out with our localities and expand to the rest of our states. So today I was putting together some sketches of potential properties in my area in Vancouver, Washington, where we could put efficiency houses, tiny homes, efficiency apartments, and be able to start getting people off the streets. So on most of the smaller properties, you can fit at least 2 efficiency homes. These are lot-sized properties. So instead of it being like a half acre, it's more like 0.1 acre. And then there's also the houses that are for sale, already built houses, already on property, and those are for sale. A lot of those houses are 2 and 3 bedroom houses. And if we as a community come together to purchase these pieces of property, we can help get people off the street. So in addition to tiny homes and building property there, we've got purchasing homes that are already available. There's also the potential for expanding that into surrounding lots and surrounding properties. So if, let's say we buy a house as a community and we set some people up to rent the rooms that are in the house, which all would go back into the Community National Housing Construction Project Fund. It helps to make sure that all of the property is paid for, that the taxes on the property is paid for. It also makes sure that we are able to expand to different areas and to buy more property. So being able to have these options available for our community to come together and purchase also gives us the ability to manage those properties as a community. And things like electing, community members to oversee those properties to make sure that they're managed properly, that maintenance is taken care of. Not necessarily that the property manager has to do it themselves, but to make sure that it gets taken care of one way or another. Even if that means hiring a contractor to come in and fix the plumbing, or to make sure that the roof is free of moss, make sure that the property itself is taken care of so that it doesn't diminish, so that it doesn't look scraggly and overgrown and all that. We do see that happen a lot, especially with properties that maybe an elderly person may live on, or that somebody uses as a summer home, that kind of stuff. But properties that are for sale, we can manage. And properties that we buy and put tiny homes on, we can manage those as a community. The management would actually be pretty simple as far as making sure that it doesn't diminish the value of the area that they're in, making sure property is taken care of, and submitting feedback on the area from the immediate neighbors. That's one of many ways we can manage these properties. But there's also different types of properties that we would need to, we can help with, that we can help get people off the streets with. This includes transitional housing for those who have been incarcerated and are coming back into the rest of the community. And We also have those who might need to be monitored. Maybe they're on parole or probation. So having a specific property or a specific house for those people, that prevents them from staying on the streets, and it gives them a place to live while they're being monitored. Everyone does need housing, especially those who are really trying. They're trying to get off the street. They're doing what they can to make sure that they've got the finances for it, and helping in a community in little ways, like maybe picking up trash, stuff like that. Showing that those individuals are putting the effort in gives us more incentive to help them get off the streets by purchasing property and putting tiny homes on them, efficiency homes, efficiency apartments, houses, on different types of property. So there's a whole financial aspect about this. I believe that we will not be able to rely on government funding for any of it, which means that we as a community would have to provide the funding for these types of property. Now, thankfully, it's pretty easy to calculate what we would need based off of how much the property is listed for. So we can do, kind of a variation, a maximum and a minimum that we'd be willing to spend. We can decide on this as a community. But I believe it would also give us the power to negotiate down a price. For instance, there is, if you know Vancouver, there's some property over on East Evergreen Boulevard. Part of the property has a house on it already, but there's a lot of space in the rest of the property. And the rest of that space could be used to build tiny homes for those, for people who are homeless in this area. So the rest of the property, I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try to show it to you. It's in pencil, so it might not be visible. This is a mock-up of the property I'm talking about on East Evergreen Boulevard, and that's just one half of the property. On the bottom here is where the tiny homes would sit. And this is the house that already sits there. Now, on this particular one, this is the other half of the property that's for sale. And if you can see it, there are multiple properties up top. Not properties, I'm sorry, tiny homes. There's a 30-foot and a 20-foot tiny home, a walkway, as well as 2 more tiny homes that could fit on that property. And this property, it sits right up against a hill. Well, it's right at the base of a little bit of a hill. So we could actually build duplexes, 2-story duplexes for these tiny homes, essentially fitting more people into that space. Now, on the first part of the property, I would only leave them a 1-story tiny home. But these are a couple of, this is an example of what we can do with property, what we as a community can do with property. Now, that particular property is listed at $1.4 million. It's pretty good sized property. It's almost a full acre. Us as a community being able to purchase this particular property, let's say that we were able to do that, we would have the power to negotiate down that price. And that price, if they donated at least part of their funding, or part of the property anyway, if they donated it and then we bought the rest, That's actually a pretty big tax write-off, depending on how much of the property they're donating, and that could be negotiated. Now, there's another property, a smaller property. If you know Vancouver, it's on it's on the northern side of 500, right next to the walkway that goes over 500 onto Falk Road. Now, that property, I don't have a sketch for it, but I've been looking at it pretty intensely, and it's only listed at it's listed at 195,000. From what I'm seeing on that particular property, we could fit at least 3 tiny homes on there, and have parking space for each of those tiny homes, plus grassy area. Not maybe a huge grassy area, but enough grass to minimize the heat output from the particular property. Also, there is enough room to plant trees so that there's a bit of shade in the area. There's a spot also, well, on that particular property that's actually pretty decent. It's already pretty level out. It just needs a driveway and such. So we can do some things with those types of properties. There's another property that I was checking out, and it's over on 68th Street, right down from St. John's. And 68th Street was actually renovated. It was worked on. They did a bunch of construction on it over the last year. So it's got some different stuff on the roadway. Actually, I haven't been down there in a little bit, but I do know they were doing construction on it. But this particular property is right on the corner of 68. And as you can see, this is the shape of the property. The very outside is the shape of the property. And the line here is how the property is shaped. So it's kind of diagonal, a little misshapen. But this is kind of a sketch of how we could put a quadruplex for at least 4 tiny homes, or an apartment complex with parking. And there is actually a protected area that's got this really magnificent tree, and I was looking at it in the pictures that are showed on the listing. So there would be grassy area, there would be place for parking for all 4 units, and there would be easy access to the sewer lines to be able to add all that stuff. Add the complex to the city sewer, to city works. So that would actually be electricity and sewer and water, all that. And this is another way we can start developing more of Vancouver, as well as getting our people off the street. This is about taking care of those who are helping themselves, taking care of our homeless problem, and this is a start. The National Housing Construction Project starts with each locality doing things like this to take care of their homeless population and those who are struggling. Even though we do already take care of our people who struggle quite a bit, with donations to food banks and Goodwill, and different organizations like that, Salvation Army. Helping people that way is definitely something we should continue to do. However, we do still need to take care of our people. Now, I have seen, like I said earlier, I've seen a bunch of properties listed for sale. They all range, there's actually quite a range of properties listed. I've seen properties listed as low as $95,000, but I've also seen properties, depending on the size, listed as high as $1.5 million. It just depends on the area, it depends on the property, the size, and all those factors that we have to take into consideration. But if we're willing to purchase these properties, willing to purchase as a community, these houses that are already up for sale, where we can determine how much we are charging for rent as a community to be able to support the National Housing Construction Project in our locality as well as nationally. I think that's going to be really important. It's sort of a self-sustaining system, if you will. The tiny homes are actually relatively inexpensive compared to a house that is already built. Most of the tiny houses that I have seen that are readily available for shipping and putting together run anywhere from $5,000 to, I think the most I saw was a $55,000, and that was for a multi-level, a 2-story tiny home, complete with I think there was 2 or 3 bedrooms in the tiny home, which would make sense because it is dual level. But tiny homes don't have to be dual level. If they're for a family in transition, then yeah, I could see that. And we can build those. But the point of it is to make sure that our people have a place that they can live, that they can be off of the streets, out of the elements, and safe. So I hope that that particular aspect has given you guys something to think about. We as a community can do this. If more people are interested, when more people become interested in this project, which I hope that they do, I'm telling more and more people about it, and I'm using these sketches to put together a presentation that I'm going to have online for the entire project, including potential places where we could snatch up that property and, you know, have the current property owner get a little bit of a tax write-off for that, especially if it's going to a project like helping get our homeless off the street. It doesn't mean that we have to give anything to the individual homeless person financially, but making sure that they have a roof over their head. That's going to be pretty important. And this is not just for our homeless. It's for veterans. Well, veterans, a lot of veterans are homeless. It's not just for the homeless, though. It's for people who are in transition, people who need to be monitored through the court system. It's also important for us to have safety around these little communities. So making sure that no one can just walk up to a tiny home and break in and harm anyone is going to be important. That is going to mean that we are probably going to end up with security fences around those properties. And I don't think that's a bad idea, because our people want to be safe. Those of us who already have our own places, or we're in a stable situation where our rent is paid and we don't have to worry about other bills, for those of us in those situations, we have that safety. We have, maybe we don't have a security fence around our house, but for those of us who are in a place, we have that safety at least. And I believe it's time for us to give that safety back to those who have helped us in our community, who are currently experiencing, you know, hardships and having difficult times with paying rent, to be able to afford food. I think that I truly believe that this is going to really boost our ability to successfully reduce homeless in our nation. By using examples like this, like the sketches that I showed you, we can develop this all across the nation. We can designate different areas, different properties for specific types of housing. And that does happen already, but as a community, we can do that too. As a community, the funding, I'm not sure how that's going to turn out. Because when we donate a little bit of money to such a project, that is something that we can truly say, you know, I'm helping my community this way. I might not be able to do construction. I might not know anything about plumbing or anything else. I might not even be able to smack a nail into a piece of wood. But at least I can help this way, even if it's just $1. And that's how this is going to be fully presented in the presentation, with the financial aspects, or regarding the financial aspects, I should say. I do believe it is important to get our community involved in it, because when we're involved, we have control over it. We can set the rules, we can set the guidelines, we can make sure that we're getting people off the street. That just reminded me, actually, there's also warehouses, empty warehouses, that we can snatch up temporarily to provide shelter, temporary shelter, to people who are still experiencing homelessness, but we haven't maybe built enough housing yet. Just being able to provide a bed and a warm place to sleep, or hopefully a safe place to sleep, that's going to also increase our chances of successfully reducing homelessness. And it's not just those things. Well, so far we've got 3 things. We've got the tiny homes, we've got buying up properties, and we've got properties for sale, housing, and we've got warehouses. If we could get more people like our churches to open their doors a little bit more, get people out of the elements, like during the wintertime, they open up winter shelters, the emergency shelters. But that's not always enough. Opening up our churches and different buildings like that, where we can provide air conditioning from heat during the summertime, and safety while people are in transition, during the day, during the night, that's going to be really important too. All of these things are going to help us reduce homelessness. All of us. All of these things. In addition to the National Housing Construction Project on a local level, being able to expand it to the national level should be, for the most part, relatively easy. It just takes following the same plan and just adapting it to your area. So if there's an area, okay, so let's use Boise, Idaho, for instance. Any homeless problem in homeless issues within Boise would adapt this plan to that area and find those properties that can be bought and developed on, as well as properties that are already developed on, like houses and warehouses, even old abandoned church buildings. As long as they are stable enough to house a few people for the night, there's no reason why we can't utilize that space to help get rid of our homeless issues, to help make sure that our people are housed some way or another. And it wouldn't be for free. There was no way it would be for free, because we do need to have this program be self-sustaining. So self-sustaining, though, means in each area. So for example, Vancouver, Washington, this plan would need to be self-sustaining for Vancouver. It would have to make sure all of the finances go back into the housing construction project for the local area. And this way, they can keep expanding. Once we have most of our homeless issue taken care of, or most of our people are off the streets, we can actually help other communities outside of Vancouver. And this would mean we would be able to use funds from the National Housing Construction Project in our area to help finance other areas. It's a kind of a pay it forward kind of thing. So, a lot to think about. The National Housing Construction Project also includes housing immigrants. We do have a lot of immigrants that come into our country. Right now it's kind of minimized and a lot of people are disappearing. But at the border, we have the option, especially for those who are waiting for court hearings and meetings, appointments, that kind of thing. We have space down there to also build some temporary housing, some efficiency housing. It would give immigration services the ability to monitor the people who are coming through legally while providing them a safe place in which they would have to pay a bit of rent. Everyone has to pay the rent. That's part of the National Housing Construction Project. Nothing is free. But based off of your income, it's a small percentage. And the most anyone would be charged is 30% of their income. But with immigration, there is also, for my immigration plan, there's also the work, being able to work. Immigrants who need visas to work. That's how they're going to pay for their rent. We can monitor them, allow them to work, contribute to our society, as long as they've gone through the legal process, and house them, make sure that they have housing that they are paying for until they are cleared to become citizens, and then they would be free to go about their business in the United States and find work in another state. Allowing our immigrant yeah, I hope I made you laugh. Allowing our immigration services to have a place to monitor folks who are coming through legally, especially, I think that's important. We don't always have the capacity to put them in a waiting facility. So making sure that we have some form of housing, actual housing, for them to be monitored at for their waiting time, for their, through their court hearing, and however long it takes them to get obtain citizenship. They do it legally, they don't get kicked out. That's how that particular aspect works. And this is part of the National Housing Construction Project. Now, even though immigration does tie into it in that particular regard, in that particular way, it is part of the National Housing Construction Project because we are paying for it. We, the people, are paying for it. And that's why we would be able to monitor them as well. Having places like down in California, right there on the border, having just areas where, small areas where there is efficiency housing, where immigrants are waiting for their court hearings and such. That's going to help a lot. It's going to take a lot of stress off of like homeless shelters and those sanctuary cities who have expanded their resources, basically exhausted their resources to help immigrants who have come in. It's also going to help food banks as well, because some of the funding would need to go to food banks so that those people who are within one of the efficiency homes, regardless of whether they're an immigrant or whether they are a citizen, they would need to be able to go to a food bank. And being able to support the food banks is something that we already do. As a community, individuals, we donate to the food banks. Putting some funding back in there, into the food banks from this construction project, as long as it's not taking away from the funding for the project. That's going to help immigrants be able to get food. It's going to help more citizens who have been homeless get food. And the point is being able to continually put back into society, into what we need. So one way or another, it's going to cycle back into our communities. I hope that I've given you guys a lot to think about. And if you have any questions, please feel free to use the discussion thread on this particular video, and I will do my best to answer questions. That is all I have for today. I thank you for your time, and may our path lead to peace and prosperity.